Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. I have combined all the videos in our agency homepage design series into this single long video so that it's easy for you to follow. Now in this video, we're going to design this complete homepage from scratch using HTML and Tailwind CSS. So let's get started. So here we can see this is the navbar. We have these hover effects, and this is the button, and this is the hero section. And if you scroll down, we have these buttons over here, and if you scroll down, we have another section, and we have these hover effects over here. And then if you scroll down, we have another section over here with the real data of the users, and then we have another section for the work. So here also we have these hover effects. And then we have another section for the testimonials, and if you scroll down, we have another section for the pricing, and then we have the contact section, and at the bottom we have the footer. So here also we have these hover effects for these links, and this is also completely responsive. So if I decrease the width of the browser window, this is how it will look on a smaller screen. So we can see that all the layout has adjusted to the small screen, and on the smaller screens we don't have the menu items displayed over here, but we have this hamburger menu icon over here, and if I click on that, we have these menu items displayed over here, and we also have the button. So this is basically how the website looks. Alright, so here I have created this folder called agency website, and I just opened it with VS Code. Now let's go ahead and create a new file called index.html, and let's go ahead and start by just typing exclamation and press tab, and you'll have this basic HTML5 code. Now here in the title, let's go ahead and type the name of the agency, and let's type welcome. And now let's go ahead and in the body, let's go ahead and type hello, and I'll just go ahead and open this in the browser. So I have this extension called live server installed in VS Code. So once you have this installed, you can just go over here to the HTML and right click and click on open with live server. And here we can see that our website is displayed in the browser. Now the first thing we will do is we will add the links of the fonts and also the icons that we're going to use in our design. So the fonts that we're going to use is called Space Mono. So this is the Space Mono font, and the other font that we're going to use is called Roboto Condensed. So let's go ahead and get these two fonts. We're going to use fonts.google.com for that. Alright, so here I'm in fonts.google.com, and let's search for Roboto Condensed. And I'll just go ahead and click on get font. Let's also select the other font. So let's go back and let's search for Space Mono. And this is the font. So let's click on get font. And now we can see that we have these two fonts displayed over here. We have Roboto Condensed and Space Mono. Let's click on get embed code, and we can just copy this link from here. So I'll just copy it, and let's go back to our HTML and let's paste it inside the head section. And let's also copy the link of the icons. So here we can see we have this option called icons. So let's open that, and here we can see that a lot of icons are displayed. So let's select one of these, and we just need to get the link. So I'll just copy this link from here, and let's go back, and I'll just paste it right here in the head section. And I'll just remove this icon names search from here, because we're going to use multiple icons from this material symbols library. So I'll just go ahead and remove this. So now we have set up our font and icons. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to set up Tailwind. So for that, let's go to the Tailwind official website. You can just go over here to tailwindcss.com and click on docs. And here in get started, you can just go over here to play CDN, and you can go ahead and copy the link from here. So this is the CDN link. I'll just copy this line of code, and I'll just paste it right here. And this CDN is designed just for development purposes. Now, once you have completed designing the website, you can just go ahead and build it and host it. I'll show you how to do that in the end. But for now, let's go ahead and copy and paste this link. And let's go ahead and test whether Tailwind CSS is working. So here I'll just create an H1. Let's type hello. If you go back, we can see hello is displayed. And let's add some Tailwind CSS classes. So I'll just type class. Let's type text 5XL and text red 500. So these are Tailwind CSS classes. So it should change the font size and also change the color of the text to red. So now we can see that the Tailwind classes are working all right. So let's delete this. Now before starting with the HTML of our design, let's add some more Tailwind CSS setup to our project. So for that, if you go back to the website, if you scroll down, we can see that we can add some custom Tailwind CSS options over here. So we just have to create a style tag with a type of text Tailwind CSS, and you can add anything you want over here. So I'll just go ahead and copy this. Let's go back and paste it right here. I'll just close the style tag. Now here, first of all, let's add some theme configuration. So I'll just tap add theme. And here, first of all, let's create a variable for font mono. I'll just type space mono. This is the font that we're going to use, and monospace for a backup font. And let's tap font condensed, and let's set it to Roboto condensed. So when we want to use this font, we'll just go ahead and type condensed, and it will use this Roboto condensed font. Let's also set the primary color. So we can say that this is the primary color. We have this yellowish color over here. So let's tap color primary, and let's set the value to E5 FF00. Right now, let's go ahead and create some styles for the base. So let's tap add layer base. So here you can go ahead and add the styles for the body, the HTML, the H1, H2, and all those types of tags. So let's tap body, and here let's go ahead and set the font family to var font mono, and let's set the background color to white, and let's set the color of all the text to black. And for the HTML, let's tap scroll behavior. Let's set it to smooth, so that when we click on any of these, we need to smoothly scroll to that section. And then let's go ahead and target the H1, H2, H3, and H4, and also a class called brand font. So when we use this brand font, we need to change the font family to var font condensed, and let's also change the text transform to uppercase. And let's also add some utility classes. So let's tap add layer utilities. Let's create a class called agency x border, and for that let's tap border of 2 pixel solid black. And let's create another class called agency shadow, and here let's tap box shadow, and let's tap 8 pixels 0 0 and black color. Right now we need to add some more classes, but first let's go ahead and start with the markup of the navbar. So inside the body, let's go ahead and create a nav tag, and for the nav tag, let's add some classes. So let's tap sticky top of 0, and let's set the z index to 50 so that it's above the other elements. Let's set the width to full and the background color to white. Let's tap border bottom of 4, and let's set the border color to black. And here we can see we have this border being displayed. Alright, now let's create a div inside here, and in this div we will set a max width. So here we can see, even if we zoom out, we can see that this navbar has a max width. So we're going to add this div for the max width. So I just tap class, and let's set it to max w. Let's tap 1440 pixels. So in Tailwind CSS, if you want to add custom values, you can just add square brackets and add that exact value over here. And then let's go ahead and tap MX auto to bring it to the center. So it will set the margin left and right to auto, and padding left and right, let's set it to 6. And now let's go ahead and create another div inside here. And in this div, let's create an anchor tag. And in this anchor tag, let's go ahead and first of all create this icon. So for the icon, let's go ahead and create a div, and the div, let's create a span for the icon. So let's tap class, and for the material icons, we need to type material symbols outlined. So when we add this class, whatever text we add inside here will be turned into icon. And here for the icon, let's type change history. So here we can see we have this icon. Now on the right side of the icon, we need to add this text. So here let's go outside this div. Let's create a span, and let's tap agency x, and let's add some classes over here. So here let's tap class. Let's set it to text 3XL font black for the font weight, and let's tap tracking, and let's set it to tighter. So this will decrease the letter spacing, and let's set the font to brand font. So this is how it looks. Now we need to display the icon and the text one next to the other. So here for the anchor tag, let's add some classes, And here let's tap display of flex, items center, and let's add a gap of 2, and this is how it looks. Now let's add some styles to this icon. So for the div, let's add some classes. Let's tap width of 10, height of 10, and we already created this agency X border. So let's use that class over here. I'll just tap agency X border, and background color of black, display of flex, items center, and justify center to bring it to the center vertically and horizontally. Let's set the text color to primary. So here we can see we have already set the primary color over here. So now if you go back to our website, here we can see that the icon is being displayed over here. All right, now let's target the container division, which is this division right here. And let's tap class. Let's set the display to flex, items center, and justify between. And let's set the height to 20. So this is how it looks. Now in the center, we need to have these different nav menu items. So let's go ahead and design that. So here outside this anchor tag, let's create a div, and let's add some classes over here. So let's tap class. On smaller screens, we will just hide it. So let's tap hidden. And for medium or larger, let's set the display to flex and items center, gap of 10. And in this, let's add anchor tags. So first of all, let's type home, and let's add some classes. So let's tap class, text small, font bold, border bottom of 2, and border transparent. But when you hover over this, we need to set the border to black. And let's also set it to uppercase, and let's also add transition to all. Right, now let's go ahead and copy this anchor tag, and let's paste it 4 more times. Right, now let's change the text. So the next one is services. Then we have work, pricing, and contact. So let's tap services, work, pricing, and contact. So here we can see that all the menu items are being displayed over here. Now on the right side, we need to display this button. So let's go outside this div, and let's create a button, and let's tap get started. And here we can see we have the button. Now let's add some classes over here. So by default, on smaller screens, we want it to be hidden. So let's tap hidden. And for medium or larger, let's set the display to block, and the background color, let's set it to primary. Here also we'll just set the agency X border class. So we have this border, and let's also set a padding left and right of 6, padding top and bottom of 2, and let's set the font weight to black and uppercase. Let's set the text size to small. Now here we can see we have the shadow at the bottom of this button. So for that, let's go ahead and use this class that we created called agency X shadow. So let's tap agency X shadow, and here we can see we have the shadow. Now here we can see when we hover over this button, we have this hover effect. So let's add that. Here let's go ahead and type agency X shadow colon hover. Here let's go ahead and tap box shadow. Let's set the value to 4 pixels, 4 pixels, 0, 0, black color. And let's tap transform, translate 4 pixels, 4 pixels for X and Y axis. And here for the agency X shadow, let's tap transition, and let's set it to all 200 milliseconds ease. So now if you hover over this, we can see that we have this hover effect. Let's also set the cursor to pointer. So here for the button, let's tap cursor pointer. So this is how it looks. So with that, we have completed designing the nav bar of our website. Right, this is my source code, and first of all, let's go ahead and go outside this nav, and let's create a new section over here. And if you type hero over here, we can see that if you go to our website, we have the hero section displayed over here. So let's go and add the text that we have over here. Before that, let's add some classes to this section. So let's tap class, and let's tap padding top of 20, padding bottom of 32, and here we can see we also have this border bottom. So let's add that. Let's tap border bottom of 4, and the border color to black, and let's tap background of white. And now we can see we have this border and also the padding displayed over here. Now let's create another division to have this max width. So if we zoom out, we can see that we have this max width for this hero section. So let's create a div, and in this div, let's add some classes. So let's type class. Let's set the max width to 1440 pixels and MX auto to bring it to the center, and padding left and right of 6. And now let's create a division inside here. And in this division, we will have a division for this left section and another division for this right section. So in this, let's create another div, and in this div, let's create an h1, and here I'll just tap v build. And for this text digital, we need to have a different styling. So let's add that inside a span. So just tap digital, and after that we need to type power. And here we can see our text is being displayed over here. Now below this, we need to have this paragraph. So let's create a p tag, and let's add the text over here. So here we have added the paragraph. And after that, we can see that we have these 2 buttons. So let's add the buttons over here. I'll just add the buttons inside a div. Let's create a button tag, and here let's tap view projects. And for this div, let's add some classes. So let's type class equals flex, so that the buttons are one next to the other. Let's type flex wrap, so that the buttons wrap to one below the other if you don't have enough space. Let's also type a gap of 6, margin top of 4. And for these buttons, let's add classes. So let's type class background of black, text of white, text size to XL, and font weight to black, padding top and bottom of 5, padding left and right of 10. And this is how it looks. And let's also add this shadow that we have over here at the bottom. Now we have already created a class called agency X shadow. So let's use that. So here in this button, let's type agency X shadow. And here you can see we have the button. I'll just go ahead and copy and paste this button down here. And for this one, we need to have a slightly different styling. So we need to have a different background color and color of text. So here for the BG black, we need to type BG white and text black. And this is how it looks. And we also need to add the border. So let's add the border. So we have already created a class called agency X border. So let's use that in both these buttons. So let's type agency X border. So this is how it looks. So the buttons are styled correctly. Now on the right side, we need to have this image and this information. So let's go outside this div right here. And here let's create another div. Now in this, we'll create a div for this image. So let's create a div, and let's add some classes over here. So let's type class agency X border, so that we have this border around the image. And we need to have this image on the right side. So here for this container div, let's add some classes. So let's type class equals display of grid. And for large screens, let's type grid columns to 12 and gap of 12, and items start to make the content align to the top. So now we can see that these are one next to the other, but on smaller screens, we can see that they are one below the other. Now for the left side, we need to span 7 columns. So here for this div, let's type class. Let's type for larger screens, call span of 7, and display of flex, flex direction to column, and gap of 8. Now we can see that the left portion spans 7 out of 12 columns. And for the right, we can just simply go ahead and type class LG call span of the remaining 5. Now for the image, let's create another div over here. And in this div, we will create an img tag. And for the source, let's type images / and I have this image called hero.webp. I'll just use that over here. Here in the alt, I'll just type hero image. And here we can see we have the image being displayed over here on the right side. Now in the original website, the image is black and white. So we can simply go ahead and do that by adding some classes over here. So let's type class name. Let's type grayscale img. And let's create that class over here. so that we can reuse it. So here let's type grayscale img, and here let's type filter grayscale 100% and contrast of 120%. So this is how it looks. Right now below the image we need to have this division. So for that, let's make the division of the image position of relative. So here let's type relative, and now we can create another div over here. So let's go outside this div, let's create another div, and here let's type established in 2014, and let's go ahead and add some classes over here. So let's type class equals position of absolute, bottom position of -8, and right position of -8, background color of primary, agency x border, and padding of 6, font weight to black, text size to 2XL, and a z index of 10 so that it's above the image. So this is how it looks. Now for the div, let's also add some classes. So let's type class and width of full, height of full. Let's add agency x border and agency x shadow. And now we can see we have this border and shadow. And we don't want to have the hover effect for the image. So for that, what we can do is let's go back, and here we have this agency x shadow. I'll just copy this and paste it down here. And here let's type agency x shadow, no hover, and I'll just remove the transition. So now let's use this class, agency x shadow, no hover. So here let's type shadow, no hover. So now we don't have the hover effect. Now we need to set the text transform to uppercase for all of this text inside the hero section. So for that, let's go back, and here in the section, let's type uppercase, and now we can see all the text is uppercase. And here we need to set it to font black for the font weight. So now everything looks all right. Right now let's tile the left part of our hero section. So first of all, we have this h1. Let's go back, and for the h1, let's add some styles. So here let's type class text 6XL, and for medium or larger screens, let's type text 8XL for the text size, and for larger screens, let's type text 9XL, and font weight to black. Leading tighter, this is basically the line height. Then we have tracking tighter for the letter spacing. So this is how it looks. Right now let's style this digital word. So we need to have black background and primary color. So here for this span, let's type class, let's type bg black and text primary. Let's add a padding left and right of 2. So this is how it looks. Right now let's go ahead and style this paragraph. So for the paragraph, let's type class, let's type text XL for the text size for smaller screens, and for medium or larger, let's type text 2XL, and let's set the font weight to bold, and let's add a max width of XL, leading of tight. Let's type border left of 8 and the border color to black, and let's add a padding left of 6. So that's basically it with the design of our hero section. Let's also take a look at the mobile version, and this is how it will look on a smaller screen. Now here for this image, we can see that it doesn't span the whole width, so let's fix that. So here for the img tag, let's type width of full, height of full, and I think that fixes it. So this is how it will look on a tablet. Let's take a look at the mobile screen, and this is how it will look on a smartphone. So with that, we have styled the hero section of our website. Now before starting with the core capabilities section, let's fix an issue that we have in the hero section. So here we can see that this is the border of the image, but in our hero section, we can see that the border is doubled. So let's go back and let's go to our code. Let's see what's the problem. So here we can see for the image, we have this div, and we have the agency X border added over here. And we have the same class added over here for another div as well. So both these borders are added to our image. Now since we already have this div, we can just go ahead and delete this div because we don't have any other class over here. So let's delete this line of code and also delete this ending tag. And now if we go back, we can see that we have the correct border width. Right now let's start with the next section. So let's go to the end of the section, and let's create a new section. And let's give it an ID of services. Now in this section, let's create a div and let's add a max width. So let's type class max w of 1440 pixels and mx auto and padding left and right of 6. And now let's go ahead and create another div. Now in this div, we will have this heading and this line that we have below the heading. So let's create an h2 and let's tap core capabilities. And below that, let's create a div and we'll turn this into a line. So let's add some classes. So let's type class width of 32, height of 4, and background color of black. So here we have this underline. Let's also change the styling of this heading. So for the h2, let's type class text of 5XL. For medium or larger, let's type text of 7XL. And let's set the font weight to black and margin bottom of 6. Let's also add some padding to the section. So here for the section, let's add some classes. Let's type padding top and bottom of 32, background of white, and border bottom of 4. Let's set the border color to black. Right, now let's go and create another div over here outside this div. Now in this div also, let's add a class. Let's type margin bottom of 20. Right, now let's create another div over here. And in this div, we will have all the services displayed. So for this div, let's add some classes. Let's tap display of grid. Grid calls to 1 for smaller screens, and for medium or larger, let's tap grid calls to 2. And for larger screens, let's tap grid calls 3. So this will have 3 columns. Now in this div, we need to create the services. So here we can see the first service is web architecture. Now we're going to render these services over here using JavaScript. But first of all, let's go ahead and create a div and let's see how it looks. And first we will style it. And after that, we will add all the content to the JavaScript and we will render it using JavaScript. So let's create a div over here, and the first thing we need to do is add this icon. So let's create a span for that. And for the icon, we need to add a class of material symbols outlined. And let's type language. So this will turn into the icon. So if you go back to our website, we can see that the icon is displayed over here. Let's also add a margin bottom of 8. And let's set the text size to 6XL. And it is not being added over here, so let's go ahead and add an exclamation over here. So this will make it important, and now we can see that the size has changed. And below that, we need to have the heading. So let's create an S3 over here. Let's type web architecture, and let's add some classes. I'll just type class name. Let's set it to text of 3XL, font weight to black, and margin bottom of 4. And below that, we need to add the paragraph. So let's create a p tag, and I'll just copy this from here and let's paste it over here. And let's type class. Let's go ahead and type text of large. Now let's add some classes to the container division. So this is the container division. So let's go ahead and type class. Let's set the padding to 12, agency X border. And when you hover over this, we need to change the background color to black. And when you hover over this, we need to change the text color to white. And let's tap transition for the colors. So this is how it looks. And the same way, we need to add all the other services. So now let's go to our JavaScript, and we have not created a JavaScript file yet. So let's tap main.js over here. So here, first of all, let's create an array of objects. So let's tap const services equals, and here we need to add the icon. So in this case, we have language as the icon, and then we need to add the title. So here we have the title as web architecture, and then we need to type description, and here we need to add the description. So in this way, we need to add all the services over here inside the JavaScript. So I'll just quickly go ahead and do that. First, I have copied and pasted all the services over here. And now let's go ahead and see how to display this using JavaScript. So let's go back to our HTML file, and this is the div that we want to render. So let's go back to the main.js file, and let's create a function. Let's call it render services. And in this function, let's create a const called container, and it will be the container of all the services. So here we can see that this is the container. So I'll just go ahead and add an ID over here. Let's call it services container. Right now, let's access this division over here inside the JavaScript. So let's type document.getElement by ID, and let's type services container. And let's add an if condition. If you don't have the container, then we'll just return. Right now we need to add the HTML. So let's type container.innerHTML equals, and in this container we need to add all these services. So let's map through all the services. So let's type services that we have over here dot map, and we'll call each of the services service. And here we'll just go ahead and add the HTML. So just go back to the HTML file and copy and paste the HTML from here, and let's paste it over here. Now here what we need to do is we need to replace all these content with the content from this service. So here we need to type $symbol curly braces. Let's type service dot, and we have the icon inside the array. So these are all the content that we have: icon, title, and description. And here we have the title. So let's remove this, and let's type $symbol curly braces service dot title, and then we have this description. So here let's go ahead and type $symbol curly braces service dot description, and then we need to go ahead and call this function. So let's type render services, and let's go back to the index.html file, and let's delete this div from here, and let's go back to our website. And here the services are not being displayed. So let's go back, and here we haven't added the link of main.js. So let's go ahead and type script :src, and here let's type main.js. And now we can see that all the services are displayed over here, but we have these gaps over here. And to fix this, we need to go ahead and here in the JavaScript code, here at the end, we need to go ahead and type .join and empty string. So now if you go back, we can see that all the services are displayed over here. So the hover effect is also working all right. And with that, we have completed designing the services section. Now in this video, we will design the next section. So it is this section right here. So we have the stats displayed over here. So we will design this stats section in this video. Let's get started. Right here, I'm in my source code, and let's go outside the section, and let's create a new section, and let's go ahead and create a div inside here. So for this div, we will add a max width. So let's type class max w of 1440 pixels. Let's type mx auto to bring it to the center, and padding left and right of 6. Now in this, we need to have this image on the left side. So for that, let's create a div, and in this div we will add the image. So let's add an img tag. Now in the images folder, I have this image called data.png. So we're going to use this image. So let's go ahead and type images /data.png over here. And in the alt, I'll just go ahead and type agency x stats. And let's add some classes to the image. So right now, this is how the image looks. Before that, let's add some padding to the section. So here, let's type class. Let's type padding top and bottom of 32. Let's set the background color to primary. And let's add a border bottom of 4 and border color to black. Right now for the image, let's add some classes. So here let's type class, and let's set the width to full, height to full, and let's set the object fit to cover so that it has the correct aspect ratio. And let's also type object center so that the center part of the image is always displayed. And let's also add the class called grayscale image, and we have already set the styling for the class right here. So here we can see grayscale image. It will basically change the image into black and white. And now if we go back, here we can see this is how the image looks. Now we need to display the image on the left side and the text on the right side. So for that, let's target the container division. So let's create a div inside here, and let's add this div for the image inside this newly created div. And for this div, let's add some classes. So let's type class display of grid, and for larger screens, let's type grid columns to 2, and let's set the gap to 20. Let's type items center. And now if you go back, this is how it looks. Now we also want to set this border and this shadow for the image. So here for this container div, let's type class, and let's type agency x border and agency x shadow, and this is how it looks. Now we don't want to have this hover effect, so we already created this class over here called agency x shadow no hover. So let's use that. Here let's type no hover, and now we don't have the hover effect. Right, now let's add the content of the right side. So let's go outside this div, and let's create another div over here. And in this div we need to have an h2, and let's type real data, and let's add a line break, and here let's type real results. So here we have the text. Now let's style this. So for this h2, let's type class. Let's set the text to 5 XL, and for medium or larger, let's type text to 7 XL, and let's type font weight to black, and this is how it looks. Right, now we need to display this actual stats below that. So let's set the display of the container division to flex, and let's type flex call, and let's add a gap of 10. And now let's add this section right here, and for this we will use JavaScript and render the division using JavaScript so that it's easy for us to later change the content. So let's go back over here and let's go to the main.js file, and let's go ahead and create a new array of objects, and let's call it stats. And in this we need to add the value. So here the first value is 200 plus. So let's add that over here. And then we need to add the label. So this is the label. So let's add that label, completed units. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this. And for the second one, let's type 98%. And here we need to type success rate. And then we have 10 plus years active. And then lastly we have 24/7 operational. And with that we have created the array of objects. Now let's create a function to render this. So here let's create a function called render stats, and in this first of all we need to get the container. So for this container let's add an ID. So below this h2 let's create a new division for the container, and let's type ID equals, let's set it to stats container, and now let's reference this. So here let's type const container equals document.getElementById stats container, and if we don't have the container, let's go ahead and return, or else let's go ahead and type container dot inner HTML equals, and let's loop through this stats array in that we have the value and label. So let's type stats dot map, and let's call each of the stats stat, and here let's go ahead and add backticks, and let's create the HTML. So first of all we need to have a div. Let's close this div over here, and in this div let's go ahead and add a class. Let's type padding of 10, background of white. And in this we need to add the stats value and the stats label. So let's create a div for the value. And here we just go ahead and type $symbol curly braces stat.value. And here for the other div, let's type stat.label. And let's add some classes. So let's type class. Here let's type text 6XL for the text size. Let's type font black for the font weight and margin bottom of 2. And for the label, let's type class. And here let's type text of small, font bold, uppercase, and tracking widest. So this will increase the letter spacing. And just like we did for this function, let's also join it. So here at the end, let's go ahead and type dot join and empty strings. Right, now let's go ahead and call the function. So let's type render stats. And here we can see all the stats are being displayed over here. Now for the container, let's add some classes. So here, let's go to the HTML file. And here for this container, let's add class. And let's set it to display of grid calls of 2. Let's set the gap to 1 pixel. And let's go ahead and type agency X border. So now if you go back here, we can see that this is how it looks. Now here we can see that because of the gap, we can see that the yellow color is being displayed over here. So let's also add a background of black. And this is how it looks. So with that, we have designed the stats section of our website. Let's also take a look at the mobile version. And this is how it looks on a mobile version. Now for the mobile version, let's go ahead and change the aspect ratio a little bit. So here in the image container div, let's go ahead and type aspect video. So this will set the aspect ratio to 16:9. And we want this to happen only on smaller screens. So here let's go ahead and type medium or larger. Let's type aspect square. And this is how it looks. And if we take a look at smaller screens, here we can see that the aspect ratio is 16:9 and everything looks alright. And if you take a look at the larger screen, we have the square aspect ratio. Now in this video, we will design the next section, which is this work section. So let's get started. Now here in this work section, we can see that we have these different works over here, and we also have these hover effects. So let's go back to our source code and let's go below this previous section and let's create a new section. And let's also give it an ID of work. And in this section, let's create a div and let's add some classes. So let's type class. And as always, let's type max width of 1440 pixels, MX auto, and padding left and right of 6. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create the heading. So here we can see we have this heading called selected work. So let's add this inside a div, and here let's type h2 and here let's type selected work. And here we have the heading being displayed. And let's also add some styles over here for the section. So let's type class, padding top and bottom of 32, background of white, and let's type border bottom of 4 and border color to black. So now we can see we have this padding and the other styles. Now let's style this heading. So for the heading, let's type class. Let's set the text to 6XL, and for medium or larger, let's type text to 8XL, and let's set the font weight to black. And below that, we need to have a paragraph. So let's create a p tag over here, and I'll just copy this text from here and let's add it over here. So here for the p tag, let's add some classes. So let's type text of XL, font weight to bold, margin top of 4, and border left of 4. And on the left side, we need to have this line. So let's type border black for the color and padding left of 4. So this will have this border on the left side. This is how it looks. Right now on the right side, we need to have these tabs. So for that, let's go to the container division. So here for the div, let's type class. Let's set the display to flex, flex direction to column for small screens, and for medium or larger, let's type flex direction to row, and for medium or larger screens, let's type items end. Now this will bring these two different sections aligned to the bottom. So what we'll do is we will add these two text inside a different div. So here let's create another div, and let's add the heading and the paragraph inside this div. And here for this container div, let's also add justify between, so that the elements are to the extreme left and right sides. And let's set the margin bottom to 20 and a gap of 8. And now let's go outside this div. Let's create another div, and in this div we need to have buttons. So we need to have all, web, mobile, and brand. For this div, let's add some classes. So let's type class of display flex, flex wrap, so that the buttons can wrap to the bottom if there is not enough space. Let's also add a gap of 4. Right now let's add buttons over here. So let's type button, and in this button let's type all. Now let's add some styles to the button. So let's type class, padding left and right of 6, padding top and bottom to 2. Let's type background color of black, text to white, font weight to black and uppercase. Let's type text size to small. So this is how this button looks. Now for all the other buttons, we need to have this border because these are not active. So I'll just copy this and paste it down here. And let's make some changes. So first of all, let's change the text to web, and here we'll just remove the background. And for the text color, let's type text of black, and let's also add a border. So let's type border of 2. Let's type border color to black, and when we hover over this, we need to have this hover effect. So for that, let's type hover bg black and hover text white, and let's also type transition all. So now when we hover over this, we can see that we have this hover effect. Let's also set the cursor to pointer. So this is how it looks. Right now, just copy and paste this button, and we have 2 more buttons. So this one is mobile and this one is brand. So with that, we have styled all the buttons. Alright, now the next thing we need to do is display these work. Now we will dynamically generate these using JavaScript. So let's go to our main.js file, and here let's create a new const. So let's type const portfolio. Let's create an array of objects, and in this object we need to have the category, and then we need to have the title. So for this title we have fintech dashboard, and then we need to have the image, and for the image I have added these images work1, work2, and work3. So let's type images work1.jpg. I think it's png, so let's type png over here. Now in the same way we need to add all the other work. So I'll just copy this and paste it down here and here. And for the second one, let's type category of mobile, and let's copy this text as the title. And for the image we have work2.png. Then we have brand for the category, and for the title let's copy this and let's paste it over here. And for the image, let's type work3.png. Right, we have created the array of objects. Now let's go ahead and create the function. So here let's create a function called render portfolio. Now in this function we need to first of all get the container. So let's go back over here and let's create a div. So below this div, which is the div inside this max width div, so below this div let's create another div, and let's add an ID over here. Let's give it an ID of portfolio container, and we will use this ID in the JavaScript. So here let's type const container equals document.getElementById portfolio container, and if you don't have the container, we'll just return, or else we'll just type container .inner.html, and here we will map through this portfolio array. So in the array we have category, title and image. So let's use these. So here let's type portfolio dot map, and for each of the work I'll just call it item, and let's use backticks, and in this we'll create a div. Now we need to add some classes to this div and we need to see how it looks. So first of all, let's create the div over here, and later we will copy and paste that div inside the JavaScript. So first let's go over here and let's create a div, and in this div we need to first of all have the image. So let's create a div for the image, and in the div let's type img. Here let's type images / work1.png, and below that we need to have another div. Now in this div we will have a span for the category. So let's type category web, and let's copy this title, and below this let's create an S3. Let's paste the title over here. So this is how it looks. Now let's style this. So let's go back, and for this div let's type class. Let's type agency x border and agency x shadow, and now I need to display 3 of these work in a single row. So for that let's go to the container, and here let's type class. Let's type display of grid. Grid calls to 1 for smaller screens, and for medium or larger let's type grid calls to 2, and for larger screens let's type grid calls to 3, and let's add a gap of 12. So this is our first work. Right now let's style this category. So here for the category span, let's type class, text to small, font bold, uppercase, text gray 500 for the color, and for the S3 let's go ahead and type class, text 3XL, font black for the font weight, and margin top of 2. Now let's add a padding to this container div. So here let's type class, padding of 8. And now for the image let's add some classes. So here for the container of the image let's type class, aspect 4:3. So this is the aspect ratio. And for the image let's type class, width of full, height of full, object cover, and this is how it looks. Now when we hover over this we need to increase the scale of the image as well. So let's go ahead and type hover, scale of 110, and transition of transform, and duration of 500. Now we also need to limit the image from getting out of this div. So for this div let's add overflow hidden, and now if we go back here we can see this is how it looks. Now when you hover over this, also the image should have the hover effect. So here we can see when we hover over this title as well, the image has the hover effect. So for that we need to create a group. So in Tailwind CSS you can go ahead and create a group over here. So let's type group, and now we can go ahead and instead of hover we can just type group hover. So now if we hover over the entire group we will have the hover effect applied. So I think that's basically it with the work card. Now let's go ahead and copy and paste this div from here, and let's paste it inside here. Now let's go ahead and replace all the static content with the content from this item. So in the item we have the category, the title and the image. So here for the image let's change the source to $ curly braces item.image, and here for the category let's type $ curly braces item.category, and here for the title let's type $ curly braces item.title. Right now let's go ahead and call this function render portfolio, and now if you go back to our website this is how it looks. So let's go back and let's join this just like we did for the other functions. So let's go over here at the end and let's type dot join and empty strings. So now if you go back this is how it looks, and everything is working alright. Let's also take a look at the mobile version. So this is how it will look on a smaller screen, and everything is looking alright. So with that we have designed the portfolio section of our website. Now in this video we will design the next section, which is this testimonial section. So let's get started. Right, here I'm in my source code, so let's scroll down and let's go to the end of the section. Now here let's go ahead and create a new section. Now in this section we'll create a div, and let's type class, let's type max w of 1440 pixels, mx auto, and padding left and right of 6. Now for the section let's add some classes. So let's type padding top and bottom of 32, background of white, border bottom of 4, and border color to black. So this is how it looks. Now in this we need to have this heading. So let's go ahead and create an h2 inside here, and here let's type declarations of trust, and let's add some classes over here. So let's type class text 5xl, font black for the font weight, margin bottom of 20, and uppercase. So here we have the heading. Now below the heading we need to display these testimonial cards. Now we're going to render these using JavaScript just like we did for the other sections. So for that let's go ahead and create a new div over here, and let's add some classes to the div. So let's type display of grid. Grid calls to 1 for smaller screens, and for medium or larger let's type grid calls to 3. And let's add a gap of 12. Let's also set an ID of testimonials container over here so that we can use this in our JavaScript. Alright, so let's go to our JavaScript file, and first of all let's create an array of objects for the testimonials. So here let's create a new const, and let's call it testimonials, and here let's type quote, and here we'll add the quote. So we can just copy this and paste it right here, and we'll just remove the double quotes from here. After that we need to add the name. So let's type name, let's set it equal to the name, so I'll just add this name over here. And then we need to add the position. So here we can see it is CEO text start. So let's type position CEO text start, and then we need to add the avatar. So let's go ahead and type avatar, and here in the images folder I have these 3 testimonial images, testimonial 1, 2, and 3.png. So let's type images / testimonial 1.png. Now we can go ahead and simply copy and paste this 2 more times. And for the second one, let's change the text to this one right here. So I'll just copy this without the double quotes, and let's add that over here. And then we have the name, and he is the director of future flow. So let's add that. And here let's type director future flow, and for the image let's type images / testimonial 2.png, and then we have a third quote. So I'll just copy this and let's paste it right here, and let's add the name over here, and for the position let's type lead echo goods. And then for the image let's type testimonial 3.png. Now if you take a look at these cards, we can see that one of them is dark, so we have a different styling for this one. So let's add one more value inside this object. So let's type style, and for the first one let's type light, and for the second one let's type style of dark, and then for the third one let's type style, let's set it to light. Alright, now the next thing we need to do is we need to render these testimonials. So let's create a function over here. Let's call it render testimonials, and we'll just call that function right here. Now in this function, first of all let's get the container. So we have already created this div with an ID of testimonials container. So let's reference that. I'll just type const container equals document.getElementById testimonials container, and if you don't have the container we'll just go ahead and return, and if you have the container we'll just go ahead and type container.innerHTML, and here we will map through all the testimonial objects So let's go ahead and type testimonials.map. And for each of the testimonials, I'll just call it testimonial. And here, let's create this arrow function. Now here, before returning the div, let's go ahead and check whether it is the light or the dark mode. So here we can see we need to check whether the style is light or dark. So for that, let's go ahead and type const is light equals testimonial.style equals light. So if the testimonial style is set to light, then the card theme is light. So we will set this to true. Now based on whether this is light or dark, we need to set the background color and some other styles for these elements. So first of all, let's type const bg class equals is light. So if it is light, then we'll just type bg of white, or else we'll just go ahead and type bg black and text of white. And then let's go ahead and type const icon bg. So for the icon also, we need to have different bg based on the style. So for this one, we have this primary color. So let's go back and here let's type is light. So if it is light, then we'll just go ahead and type bg black and text of primary, or else we'll just go ahead and type bg of primary, which is this greenish yellow color, and we'll set the text color to black. Now let's go ahead and create one more const called border class equals. So for this one, we have this white border, and for the light styles, we have this black border. So let's go ahead and type is light. So if it is light, then we'll just go ahead and type border black, or else we'll just go ahead and type border white. Now let's create one more const for the color of the position. So this is the position. So I'll just type const position color equals is light. So if it is light, we'll just go ahead and type empty strings. And if it is dark, we'll just type text gray 400. And I think that's basically it with the const based on is light. Now let's go ahead and return the HTML. So let's type return and let's use backticks. First of all, we'll just create a div. Now in this div, we need to add a div for the quotes icon. So let's go ahead and create a div over here. Now here we'll just create a span. And in this span, let's use the format quote icon from material symbols. And to use that, we need to add a class to the span. And we need to type material symbols outlined. So now if you go back to our website, we can see that we have these double quotes displayed over here. Now we have set the size over here, but it is not added in our design. So I'll just add an exclamation point, and this will make it important. And now we can see that the size is correct. Now let's go back over here, and at the end, just like we did for the other functions, let's use a join, and let's type empty strings so that we get rid of the commas in our design. Now let's go to the container division, and based on whether the style is light or dark, we need to add different background colors. Now we have already created this bg class const over here, so let's use that. So here let's type class equals. First of all, let's add agency x border. Let's type padding of 10 and $symbol curly braces, and we will use this bg class const. So let's type bg class, and this is how it looks. We can see that for the dark one, we have this dark background color. Now we need to position this icon at the top left over here, and we need to position it based on this container div. So for the container div, let's go ahead and type relative, and here for this div, let's type class equals position of absolute. Let's set the top position to -6, and let's set the left position to -6 as well. Let's type width of 16 and height of 16. And for this also, let's type agency x border. This will add the border to our div. Let's also type display of flex, align items to the center, and justify content to the center so that the icon is in the center of the div. So now if you go back, this is how it looks. Now let's also add the background color. So we have already created this icon bg const. So let's use that. Here let's type $symbol curly braces icon bg. So now we can see we have the correct background color for the icons. All right, now we need to add this actual quote. So let's go back, and here outside this div, let's create a paragraph, and here we'll just add the testimonial quote. So let's type double quotes, let's type dollar symbol curly braces, and here I'll just type testimonial dot quote. So this will display the quote over here. Now let's also add some styles to the quote. So for the paragraph, let's type class equals, let's set it to text of large, font bold, italic, and margin bottom of 8. Right, below that we need to have these info, the name and the position, and also this image. So let's go ahead and create a div for that. I'll just type div over here. And first of all, we need to add the image. So let's create a div for the image. In this div, we will just create an img tag, and let's type src equals, let's type dollar symbol curly braces. Here we'll just type testimonial dot avatar. Now for this div, let's go ahead and add some classes. So let's type class equals width of 12, height of 12, agency x border, and this is how it looks. We also want to make this black and white. So let's type grayscale img. So this is the class that we have already created. So now we can see that the images are black and white. Let's go back to the image, and let's also add some classes over here. Here let's type object cover so that we have the correct aspect ratio. Now beside this, we need to have the name and the position. So for the container, let's go ahead and add some classes. So let's type class equals display of flex, items center, gap of 4, border top of 2, and let's also use the border class const that we created over here. So let's type border class over here. Let's type padding top of 6. So this is how it looks. We can see that we have these borders at the top. And then lastly, we need to add the name and the position. So let's create a div for that. So here let's type div, and let's create an h4, and let's type class, and let's type dollar symbol curly braces testimonial dot name, and let's create a paragraph tag. Let's type dollar symbol curly braces. Here let's type testimonial dot position. Right, now let's add some classes. So let's type class equals font black for the font weight, and here for the paragraph, let's type class equals text of small, text of extra small, font bold and uppercase. Let's also use the position color constant that we created. So here let's type dollar symbol curly braces position color. So now if you go back, this is how it looks. So with that, we have completed designing the testimonial section of our website. Let's also take a look at the mobile version. So this is how it will look on a smartphone. Now in this video, we will design the next section, which is this pricing section. So let's get started. Right, so here I am in my source code, and let's go outside this section and let's create a new section, and let's give it an ID of pricing, and let's also add some classes to the section. So let's type class padding top and bottom of 32, background of black, text color to white, and a border bottom of 4, border color to black. Now let's go back, and this is how it looks. Let's also go ahead and take a look at the heading. So we have cost structure displayed over here. So I'll just copy this. Let's go back, and first of all, let's create a new div, and let's give some classes. So let's type class max width of 1440 pixels, and mx auto to bring it to the center, and padding left and right of 6. Now for the heading, let's create a div, and in this div, let's create an h2, and let's paste the heading over here. And for this div, let's add a class, and let's type margin bottom of 20, and let's add some classes to the h2. So let's type class text of 5xl, and medium or larger, let's type text of 7xl. Let's set the font weight to black, text color to primary, and margin bottom of 4. So this is how it looks. Now below this heading, we have this paragraph. So I'll just copy this, and let's go back, and here let's create a paragraph tag, and let's paste it over here, and here let's add some classes. So let's type text of XL, font bold and uppercase. So this is how it looks. Now let's go ahead and create another div for this pricing. So let's go outside this div. Let's create a new div, and in this div we will add the pricing, but we will do that dynamically using JavaScript. So here for this div, let's add some classes. Let's type display of grid. Grid calls to 1. And for medium or larger screens, let's type grid calls to 3. And let's set the gap to 0. Let's set the border to 4, border color to white. Let's also add an ID so that we can reference this in the JavaScript. So let's type pricing container over here. Right, now let's go to our JavaScript file and let's start adding the JavaScript. So first of all, let's go ahead and create an array of objects. So let's type const pricing plans, and in this we need to have the plan name, the price, then we need to have the features, and then we need to have this button. And for the button we need to have different styles, so we need to add the styles for the button as well. And then we need to add the button text, and we need to also add a boolean for recommended. We need to set whether the recommended is true or false. So let's go back to our JavaScript code and let's type name, and here let's type starter. So this is the name of our plan, and after this let's add the price. So let's set the price to $9.99, and let's type features. Now we need to have multiple features, so let's add an array and let's add these features over here. You can add any number of features you want over here. And then we need to add the button text. Let's set the text to select. And for the button style, let's add some classes. So let's type bg white and text black, and let's type recommended. Let's set it to false for the first plan. So this is the details of the first plan. Let's just copy this and paste it down here and here. So for the second one, let's change this to elite, and let's change the pricing. Let's also add the features, and then for the button text we have select, and here for the button styles let's tap bg of black and text to white, and the recommended should be set to true. Now we need to add different styling for this whole card, so let's add one more value called style and let's set it to primary. Right, now for the third one, let's change the name to custom, and for the price let's type POA, and then we have these features, so I'll just add that. And then we have the button text, so we need to type contact sales, and then we have the button style, so the bg white and text black is correct, and the recommended is set to false. Right, now let's go ahead and create a function to render the pricing. Let's go ahead and create a function called render pricing, and first of all let's get the container. So let's type const container equals document.getElement by id, and we have named it pricing container, and if you don't have the container then we'll just return, or else let's go ahead and type container.innerHTML. Let's set it to pricing plans.map, and we'll map through each of the pricing. So let's call each of the plans plan. Okay, now first of all let's go ahead and check whether this is primary. So we need to check whether we have this style set to primary so that we can style it differently. So here let's go ahead and create a new const called is primary. Let's set it equal to plan.style equals primary, and let's create a const called bg class. So let's set it to is primary, and if is primary is true, then we need to set the class to bg primary. So this is our primary color, and let's set the text color to black, or else let's go ahead and keep it blank. Now we also need to change the color of these icons. So for that let's create a new const called icon color equals is primary. So if it is true, then we'll just set it to blank, or else let's type text color to primary. Right, now let's go ahead and return the HTML. So let's tab return, let's add backticks, and first of all let's create a div, and in this div First of all, we need to add whether it is recommended or not. So for that, we need to change the position of this div to relative. So let's tap class. Let's set it equal to padding of 12. Let's tap $symbol curly braces bg class. So if it is primary, then we are setting the background color to primary and the text color to black. And let's tap display of flex direction to column, and let's tap position of relative. Now let's go ahead and first of all see whether the plan is recommended. So let's tap $symbol curly braces. Here we'll just type plan dot recommended. So if it is recommended, then we'll just go ahead and type div, and in this div let's tap recommended, and let's add some classes over here. So let's tap class equals position of absolute, top to 0, right to 0, background of black, text color to primary, font weight to black, and padding left and right of 4, padding top and bottom of 2, and text size to small and uppercase. If the plan recommended is false, we'll just go ahead and type blank. So now let's go ahead and type render pricing over here. So let's see whether recommended is being displayed in our web page. So let's go back, and here we can see that recommended is displayed over here. Let's also remove these commas. So we can just go ahead and type dot join empty string, and now we can see the plan in the center is recommended and it is also primary. Now let's go ahead and add the heading. So here let's go outside the curly braces and let's create an S3. Let's type $symbol curly braces plan.name, and let's close the S3 over here. Let's add some classes. So let's type class equals text to 4XL, font black, and margin bottom of 4. And let's go back, and here we can see that the names are being displayed over here. Now let's create a div, and in this div let's type $symbol curly braces plan.price. Let's add some classes over here. So let's type text of 6XL for the size. Let's type font black for the font weight and margin bottom of 8. So here we can see that the pricing is also being displayed. Right now we need to display the features. So let's go back, and here let's type UL. Now we need to display the features as list items. So first of all, we need to map through all the features. So let's type $symbol curly braces, and let's type plan.features.map, and let's call each of them feature, and let's type backticks, and we'll just simply create a list item, and here let's type $symbol curly braces feature. So we are calling each of the features feature over here, and let's also add some classes. Now before that, if you go back to our original design, we can see that we have this icon in front of the features. So here let's create a span, and this is for the icon. So for the icon, we just use the icon called check box, and we need to add this class to the span. So let's type material symbols outlined, and for the color let's type $symbol curly braces icon color. So now if you go back to our website, we can see that the icons and the features are displayed. Let's also add some styling over here to make it look good. So here for the li, let's type class, and let's set the display to flex, align items to the center, and let's add a gap of 4. Let's type font bold and uppercase. And since we have these commas over here, let's also add a join. So here let's type dot join, and this is how it looks. Let's also add some styles to the UL. So let's type class, and let's type space y of 4 to add some vertical spacing, and let's type margin bottom of 12, and this is how it looks. Now in the end, we also need to add the button. So let's go outside the UL. Let's create a button tag, and in this button tag let's add the button text. So let's type $symbol curly braces plan dot button text, and let's add some classes to the button. So let's type class equals width of full, padding top and bottom of 4, and let's also add the button styles. So let's type $symbol curly braces, and let's type plan dot button style, and let's change this back to double quotes. And here let's type font weight to black, uppercase, and text of Excel. Let's also add agency X shadow. So this is how it looks. Now here we can see that all these buttons are in the same line. So for that we need to add flex grow to this features section. So let's go back, and here for this UL let's tap flex grow. So now we can see that all these buttons are on the same line. Now here for the select button of the primary pricing, let's change the color to yellow, and let's also add a black border. So let's go back and let's go to the pricing array, and here for the button style let's tap background of primary, and let's tap border to and border color to black, and let's also set the text color to black, and I think this looks alright. So let's also take a look at the mobile version. So this is how it will look on a smaller screen, and everything is looking alright. So with that we have finished styling our pricing section. Now in this video we will design the next section, which is this contact section. So let's get started. Right here I'm in my source code, and let's go outside this pricing section. Let's create a new section, and let's also give it an ID of contact, and let's also add some classes. So let's type class, padding top and bottom of 32, bg white. Right now let's create a div over here, and let's add some classes to this div. So let's type class, max w of 1440 pixels, mx auto, and for medium or larger let's type padding left and right of 6. Now in this div let's create another div for containing these two sections. We have this form over here on the left side and this information on the right side. So let's create a div, and let's add some classes over here. So let's type class display of grid, and for larger screens let's type grid calls to 2, and let's also add agency X border. Now for the left side we need to have the form. So for the form let's create a div, and let's give it a class of padding 16 and background of white, and in this let's create a form, and let's add a class to the form, and let's type space y of 10. So this will add vertical spacing between the elements. Right now we need to create this label and this input field. So let's go ahead and type div, and in this div let's create a label, and in the for let's type first name, and we need to add this same name for the ID of the input field, and the label let's type first name, and let's also add some classes to the label. So let's type class, let's type text of small and font black and uppercase. So now if you go back to our website, here we can see we have this label displayed over here. Right now let's add the input field. So let's go outside the label and let's tap input, and we'll set the type to text, and let's add a placeholder. Let's type John. Let's also set the ID to first name, and let's also add some classes. So let's type class width of full, padding of 4, agency X border, background of white, text to black, and when you focus over the input field, let's set the background color to primary. Let's also remove the default outline. So let's type outline none. Let's add a transition for the hover effect. So let's type transition all, font bold and uppercase. So this is the input field. Now we need to add some spacing between the label and the input field. So here for the container div let's type class. Let's set it to space y of 4, and we also need to create a container for this, because we need to have two of these input fields displayed one next to the other on larger screens. So let's create a div over here, and let's remove the ending tag and let's add it right here. And for this one let's type class display of grid, grid calls to 1, and for smaller or larger screens let's type grid calls to 2, and let's add a gap of 10. And now we need to add one more input field for the last name. So let's just copy this and paste it down here. And let's change this to last name. Let's change the ID as well. And now if you go back here, we can see that both these input fields are one next to the other. Now the space Y is not working over here. So let's go ahead and type display of flex call, and let's add a gap of 4. Right, that works. So I'll just copy this and paste it down here. So now we have the first name and the last name. Now let's add the next input field, which is email address. So I'll just go ahead and copy this from here, and let's go outside this div. This is the container div for the first name and the last name. So here, let's paste it, and let's change the name to email. Let's type email address. And here for the ID, let's type email. Here also, let's type email. Let's change the type to email as well. And here for the placeholder, let's type do. And here for the placeholder, let's type john@example.com. So now if you go back, here we can see we have the email ID input field. And lastly, we need to have the message text area. So let's go ahead and paste it right here. Let's change the input field to text area. And here let's type message. For the ID also, let's type message. Let's type message over here. And for the placeholder, let's type describe project scope. And we need to remove the type from here. And for the rows, let's type 4. Right, now let's go back. And there's some problem with our text area. So this should not be self-closing. This should have an ending tag. So let's type text area over here. So now we can see we have all the input fields ready. Now let's add the button. So we need to have this button right here. So let's go outside this div. Let's create a button. And in this button, let's add the text send data. And for the button, let's add some classes. So let's set the class to W of full, BG black, text white, font black for the font weight, padding top and bottom of 6. And let's type uppercase, text of 2XL. And when you hover over this, let's change the background color to primary. And when you hover over this, we also need to change the text color to black. And let's add a transition so that we have smooth hover effects. And let's set the type of the button to button. So this is how it looks. Let's also set the cursor to pointer. Right, now let's create the next section, which is this section right here. So let's go back and let's go outside this div. So this is the div where we have the form. So let's go outside this div and let's create a div and let's give it some classes. So let's type class. Let's set the background color to black, text color to white, padding of 16, display of flex direction to column, justify between, and this is how it looks. Let's add the content. So first of all, we need to add the heading. So let's type h2, and in this h2, let's type initiate contact. I'll just copy it from here. And let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name, text of 6XL, font black, and margin bottom of 8. Right, now we need to create a paragraph. So I'll just copy this. Let's create a p tag. Let's paste the text over here and let's add some classes. So let's type class, text of XL, font bold, margin bottom of 12, and let's type leading tight. This is basically the line height. So here we have the paragraph. Now here we can see that we have this gap between this heading and the paragraph. That's because we had added this justify between over here. So let's add all of the content inside another div. So now this is how it looks. Right, now let's go ahead and add these content. So we have the email, phone number, and the location. And then at the bottom, we have these icons. So let's go back and let's create a div. And let's add some classes. So let's type display of flex direction to column, gap of 8, And let's create a div over here. In this div, we need to have the email icon and the email ID. So I'll just copy this, and let's create a span, and let's tap mail for the email icon. And we need to add a class called material symbols outlined. Let's also add another class. So let's tap text primary for the color and text 3XL for the size. And let's also add the text. So let's tap span and let's add the text over here. This is the email ID. Let's add some classes over here as well. So let's tap class, text of XL and font bold. And for the container, let's tap class, display of flex, items center and gap of 6. So here we have the email ID and the icon. Now let's add the phone number. So I'll just copy this. Let's go back, and here I'll just simply copy this div and paste it down here 2 more times. And for the second one, let's change the icon to call, and I'll just copy this and paste the text over here. So here we have the phone number, and then we need to add the location. So I'll just copy this, and for the location icon, let's change the name to location on, and let's paste the location over here. So now we can see we have the location displayed over here as well. Right now, the last thing we need to do is we need to add these icons. So let's go back and let's go outside this div, and let's create a div, and in this, for each of the icons, let's create separate divs. Let's create a span. Let's tap public for the icon, and for the class, let's tap material symbols outlined, and for the container div, let's tap class, size of 16 and agency X border, display of flex, items center and justify center, so that the icon is in the center of the div. And when you hover over this, we need to change the background color to primary, and let's tap hover. Let's also change the text to black, which is the icon color. Let's tap transition for colors, and let's set the cursor to pointer. And now if you go back, we can see that we have this hover effect. Let's create one more icon. So I'll just copy this and paste it down here. Here for the icon, let's type alternate email. Let's also bring these one next to the other. So for the container div, let's tap class, display of flex, gap of 6 and margin top of 20. So this is how it looks. So with that, we have completed designing the contact section of our website. So let's also take a look at the mobile version. So this is how it will look on a smartphone. So everything is looking all right. Now in this video, we will design the footer. So this is how the footer looks. So let's get started. Right here, I'm in my source code. And first of all, let's go ahead and create a footer tag. So in this footer tag, we need to have a max width. So let's create a div for that. And in this div, let's add some classes. So let's type class equals max width of 1440 pixels and mx auto to bring it to the center and padding left and right of 6. And after that, we need to have these different sections. So let's create a div, and let's type class display of grid, and let's type grid calls to 1 for smaller screens, and for medium or larger, let's type grid calls to 2. And for larger screens, let's type grid calls to 4. And let's add a gap of 16. Now the first thing we need to have is this section right here. So we have the logo, the name of the agency, and then this paragraph. So let's do that. Here inside this div, let's create another div. And let's add some classes. So let's type display of flex, flex direction to column, and gap of 6. Now, first of all, we need to add the logo. So we need to have this icon on the left side and the name on the right side. So let's create a div for that. And in this div, we need to have a div for the logo icon. So let's create a span for that. And let's type class, material symbols outlined. And here for the icon, let's type change history. So this is the icon. So here we can see that this icon is being displayed over here. Now on the right side, we need to have the name. So here, let's go outside this div. Let's create another span and let's type agency X. And let's add some classes over here. So let's type class text of 3XL for the text size and font weight to black. Let's type tracking tighter. And here we can see we have the text being displayed over here. Now we need to display both of these one next to the other. So here for this div, let's add some classes. So let's type class display of flex. Let's type items center and a gap of 2. Now we need to add some background around this logo icon. So for that, let's go to this div and let's type class. Let's type size of 10, which is the width and the height. And let's type background of black and display of flex, items center, and justify center to bring it to the center. And we need to change the color of the icon. So let's type text primary. So this is the color. So this is how the logo looks. Now let's go to the footer tag and let's add some classes over here. So let's type class, background of white, border top of 8, and border color to black. And let's also add padding top and bottom of 20. Right now let's add this paragraph. So I'll just copy this and let's go back and let's go outside this div. And in this paragraph, let's add the text. Let's add some classes over here. So let's type class. And here let's type text of SM and font bold, uppercase, and leading relaxed. So now if you go back, here we can see that we have the logo and the paragraph displayed over here. Right now the next section we need to have is the organization section. So let's go back and let's go outside this div and let's create another div, and here we need to add a heading. Let's create an H4 and let's type organization, and let's add some classes over here. So let's type class. Let's type text of Excel, font black, margin bottom of 8, and uppercase. So here we can see we have the heading being displayed over here, and after that we need to display these list items. So for that, let's create a UL, and we will display the list items using JavaScript. So here let's add some classes. So let's type class, display of flex, flex direction to column, gap of 4, and font bold, and uppercase, and text of small. And we'll populate these list items using JavaScript. Right now let's copy this and paste it down here 2 more times. And the next one is capabilities. So here let's change this to capabilities. And then we have intelligence. So let's type intelligence over here. So now we can see all these section headings are being displayed over here. Now for the intelligence section, we need to have this text and also this input field. So let's do that. Here let's remove this UL and let's create a paragraph. I'll just go ahead and copy this text from here and paste it right here. And for the paragraph, let's type class and let's type text of small, font bold, uppercase, and margin bottom of 6. And after that, we need to have the input field. So let's go ahead and create an input field below this paragraph. I'll just add it inside a div and let's type input. Let's set the type to email and let's add a placeholder. Let's type enter email. And let's add some classes. So let's type class of background white, border none, padding left and right of 4, padding top and bottom of 3, text of small, width of full, font bold, uppercase, outline none. And for the container div, let's add a border. So let's type class. Let's type display of flex, agency X border. So now we need to have the button over here on the right side. So for that, let's create a button and let's create a span. Let's add the icon over here. So the icon is called arrow forward. And we need to add the class called material symbols outlined. And here we can see we have the icon. Right now for the button, let's add some classes. So let's type class, background of black, text white, padding left and right of 4. And when you hover over this, we need to set the background to primary. And when you hover over this, we need to set the text color to black. And let's add a transition for the colors. Now for the button, let's set the display to flex and items center and justify center so that the icon is in the exact center. And let's also set the cursor to pointer. So this is how it looks. And below all of this, we need to have this copyright info. So let's go back and let's go outside this div. So this is the div where we have this display of grid, and we need to go below this div and let's create a div. Let's add a paragraph, and I'll just copy this and paste it over here. And we also need to add these two links. So here let's go outside the paragraph. Let's create a div. Let's add an anchor tag, and here let's tap privacy, and let's add some classes over here. So let's tap class. When you hover over this, we need to set the background color to primary and padding left and right of 1. So here we can see we have this link. Let's go back and here for the container div, let's add some classes. Let's type border top of 4 and border black, and let's type margin top of 20, padding top of 10, and flex call. And for medium and larger screens, let's type flex direction to row and justify between so that these two elements are to the extreme left and right sides. And let's also type items center to bring it to the center vertically, and let's add a gap of 6, text small, font black and uppercase. So now we can see we have this link displayed over here. Let's also add another link, and let's copy this and paste it down here. Here let's change the text to terms, and this is how it looks. We have these two links displayed over here. We need to add some gap between these two links. So for that, let's go to the container, and here let's type class. Let's set the display to flex and a gap of 10. So this is how it looks. Right now let's go ahead and populate these links over here using JavaScript. So let's go back and let's add some IDs to these UL so that we can reference it in the JavaScript. So here for the organization, for the UL, let's type ID equals footer organization. And then for the capabilities, let's type ID equals footer capabilities. And for intelligence, we don't have to have an ID. So let's go ahead and go to our main.js file. And first of all, let's create an array. Let's call it footer links. And here let's type organization. Let's set it equal to an array. And here we will have the text. So first one is about. And then we need to have the link. So let's type href. Let's set it to hash. So in this way, we need to add all the other links. So I'll just copy this and paste it over here. And here we need to change this to careers. And then we have press and legal. So I'll just duplicate this. And here let's tap press. And here let's tap legal. And the same way we need to have the capabilities. So I'll just copy this and paste it down here. And here let's type capabilities. Here let's add development, systems, search and identity. Let's tap system over here, search and identity. Right now let's create a function to map through these items. So here let's create a function called render footer links. And first of all, let's reference the ID. So let's type const org container equals document dot get element by ID. Here let's type footer organization. And let's type const cap container equals document dot get element by ID. And here let's type footer capabilities. Right now let's type if we have org container, then we'll just type org container dot inner HTML equals footer links dot organization dot map. And for each of the link, I'll just call it link, and we'll just go ahead and return an HTML. So let's create a link, and here let's go ahead and type $symbol curly braces link, which we're calling it over here, dot text, And we also need to get the href. Now we need to add this inside an anchor tag so that we can click on the links. So let's type A, and for the href, we need to type $ curly braces, link.href, and let's add this link inside the anchor tag. Let's also add some classes to the anchor tag. So let's type class equals, and here let's type hover bg primary, and padding left and right of 1. Or now if you go ahead and call this function, so let's type render footer links. Here we can see that the organization links are displayed over here. We also need to join it to get rid of these commas. So here let's type dot join empty strings. So now we can see that all these links are displayed over here. Now let's do the same for the capabilities. So I'll just copy this and let's paste it over here. And here let's type cap container. And here instead of org container, let's type cap container. And here instead of organization, let's type capabilities. And everything else will be the same. So now if you go back, here we can see that the links of capabilities are also being displayed. So everything is working all right. Let's also take a look at the mobile version. And this is how it looks on a smaller screen. So with that, we have completed designing the footer of our website. So here on the right side, we need to have the menu icon. And when we click on that, we need to display the mobile navigation menu over here. So let's get started. All right, so here I'm in my source code, and the first thing we will do is we will add the mobile nav menu. So let's go to the nav, and in the nav we have this get started button. So below the button, let's create one more button over here, and in this button let's add the menu. So let's create a span for the menu. Let's tap menu for the icon, and we need to add a class called material symbols outlined. Let's also set the text to 3XL. And for the button, let's type ID and let's set it equal to mobile menu button so that we can access that in the JavaScript. And we will hide it on medium or larger screen. So let's type MD hidden over here. So now we can see we have this menu icon displayed right here. And if you go to larger screens, the menu icon is not being displayed. All right, now the next thing we need to do is we need to create the mobile nav. So let's go outside this div, and just before the nav ends, let's create a comment. I'll just type mobile menu, and here let's create a div, and for the div let's add an ID. So let's set the ID to mobile menu, and let's also add some classes. So let's type class hidden by default, and let's set it to fixed, inset 0 to set the top, right and bottom and left positions to 0. Let's type background of black. Let's set the text color to white and z index of 50 so that it's above all the other elements. Now for medium or larger screens, let's hide it always. And on mobile version, we'll just display it when we click on this menu icon. Now in this div, let's create another div, and let's set the display to flex. Let's type flex call, and let's set the height to full. Now in this, the first thing we need to do is we need to display these two elements. We need to have this icon and this agency name, and on the right side we need to have this close icon. So for that, let's create another div over here, and in this div we'll create a div for the icon and the agency name, and then we'll create a button for the close button. So in this button, let's add a span, and let's add the icon called close. So here let's type class material symbols outlined and text 4XL. Now for the button also, let's add an ID, and let's set it to mobile menu close, and let's type class. Let's set it to text primary, and now let's go ahead and remove this hidden from here. So this is how it looks right now. Now on the left side, we need to have the logo and the name of the agency. So here let's create a div, and let's add a span over here, and let's type change history. This is the icon name, and let's add a class of material symbols outlined. And now we can see we have the icon displayed over here. Now let's go outside this div, and let's create a span, and let's type agency X over here. Let's add some classes. So let's type class text of 3XL, font black, tracking tighter, and brand font. Now the logo and the name should be side by side. So here let's go to the container div, which is this one right here. Let's type class, and let's type display of flex, item center, and a gap of 2. Now for this logo, let's add some classes. So let's type class size of 10, border, and border white. Let's type background of white and text color to black, display of flex, items center, and justify center. Right now we need to display this logo and this close button side by side. So let's go to the container. So this div right here, and let's type class. Let's set it to display of flex, items center, justify between, padding of 6, border bottom of 4, and border color to primary. And this is how it looks. Right now let's go outside this div, and here let's create another nav. Let's type home over here. So here we can see we have the menu item displayed over here. Let's change this into an anchor tag, and I'll just type hash for the href, and let's add some classes. Let's type text of 2XL, font black, uppercase, padding top and bottom of 4, border bottom of 2, border of gray 800. And when you hover over this, we need to change the border color to primary, and on hover let's also change the text color to primary, and let's type transition of all, and let's add home over here. So this is how it looks. Right now let's go ahead and copy and paste this anchor tag, and we need to have 4 more of these. So let's paste it down 4 more times. And for the second one, let's change the text to services, and then we have work, pricing, and contact. Right now let's go to the container, which is the nav, and let's add some classes over here. So let's type class. Let's set it to display of flex, flex direction to column, gap of 2, padding of 6. Let's also type overflow y of auto, so that if the height is less, then we'll be able to scroll up and down. And below this nav we need to have a button. So here let's create a div, and let's create a button in here, and let's type get started. And for the button, let's type class, width of full, bg primary, text of black, font black for the font weight, and padding top and bottom of 4, uppercase, text of XL. And when you hover this, we need to change the background color to white and transition colors. So this is how it looks. And we want this button to be at the bottom. So for that, let's go to the nav, and here let's go ahead and type flex grow. So it will take up the remaining space, and now we can see that the button is at the bottom. So now if we add more of these menu items, then we'll be able to scroll up and down. So here we can see this is how it looks. Alright, let's undo that. Alright, now the next thing we need to do is we need to display these menu items when we click on the menu icon. So let's go back to the container div, and here let's tap hidden, and now let's go to the JavaScript file, and let's add the functionality. So first of all, let's reference some of these elements. So here let's scroll up, and let's go ahead and type const mobile menu button equals document dot get element by id. Let's type mobile menu button. So this is the id that we had given for the button, and then we need to also reference the mobile menu, which is this one right here. So let's type const mobile menu equals document dot get element by id. Let's type mobile menu over here, and then we need to reference the close button. So it is inside here. So we have this close button with a class of mobile menu close. So let's type const mobile menu close equals document dot get element by id, and let's type mobile menu close. And then we also need to reference each of these links that we have over here, so that when we click on any of these, the menu should close. So for that, we need to add a class to each of these anchor tags. So let's add a class called mobile menu link. Let's add this to all our anchor tags. So I just added the class to all our anchor tags. Now let's go back, and here let's type const mobile menu links equals document dot query selector all, because we have multiple elements, and here let's type dot mobile menu link. Right now let's add the functionality. So let's go ahead and type if we have the mobile menu button, then we'll just type mobile menu button dot add event listener, and let's listen for the click event. And when we click on this, we need to go ahead and run this function. So here let's go ahead and type mobile menu dot class list, and let's remove the hidden class from here. So when we remove the hidden class, it will show our mobile navigation menu. And let's also stop the scrolling throughout our website. So let's type document.body.style.overflow equals hidden. So now if you go ahead and click on this menu icon, we can see that our mobile menu items are displayed over here. All right, now let's go ahead and add the functionality of the close button. So let's type if mobile menu close, then let's type mobile menu close dot add event listener. Let's listen for the click event, and here we need to go ahead and add the class called hidden to the mobile menu. So let's type mobile menu dot class list dot add hidden, and let's type document dot body dot style dot overflow, and let's set it to empty string. So now if you go back and click on this menu icon, we have the mobile menu items displayed over here. And if I click on the close button, we can see that it disappears. So it is working all right. Now when we click on any of these links, we need to close the mobile nav menu. So for that, let's type mobile menu links dot for each, and let's call each of them link. And here let's type link dot add event listener. Click. So we will add event listeners to each of the links inside mobile menu links. And here let's go ahead and create an arrow function, and here let's type mobile menu dot class list dot add hidden, and let's type document dot body dot style dot overflow equals blank. So now if we click on any of these menu items, we can see that the menu closes. So with that, we have completed designing the mobile nav menu for our website. So now in this video, I'll show you how to make this project production ready. So we'll go ahead and remove the CDN link from our HTML file for Tailwind CSS, and we'll build a production ready code, and then we will deploy it to Netlify for free. So we will do all of that in this video. Let's get started. Alright, so here's my source code, and if you go to the HTML file in the head section, we can see that we are importing these fonts and all those things over here. But below that, we have this script that we are importing, and this is basically a CDN of Tailwind CSS. Now we had used this Tailwind CSS CDN so that we can design our website really quickly. And for that, if you go to the Tailwind CSS official website, here if you go to get started, here we can see we have this option called play CDN, and we just used this CDN to build our website, and this is how it looks. But here we can see that it clearly says that use the play CDN to try Tailwind right in the browser, and it is designed for development purposes only. Now since our development is complete, we need to deploy this online. So for that, we need to go ahead and use one of these options. So there are different options over here. So if we are using Vite, we can follow this guide, and there are other options over here as well, like framework guides and these things over here. But since our project is just HTML and JavaScript file, we need to use this Tailwind CLI. So let's do that. Let's go to Tailwind CLI, and here we can see we have the instructions. So the first thing we need to do is we need to initialize our project using npm. Now before using this command, make sure that you already have Node.js installed on your system. So once you do that, you can just go ahead and type npm init, and if I press enter, we can see that we have some options displayed over here. We'll just press enter to select the default values. So now we can see that our project has been initialized. So if you go to the project structure, here we can see we have a new file called package.json, and in that we have these details. Now we need to install a package called Tailwind CSS and Tailwind CSS CLI. So let's copy this command from here, and let's go back and paste the command right here, and let's press enter. And here we can see that if you scroll down in our package.json file, we have these two dependencies installed. Right, now let's go back to our guide, and the next thing we need to do is we need to create a CSS file, and we need to add this code, import Tailwind CSS. So let's copy this, and we'll just create a file called input.css, and let's paste the code over here. Right, now if you go back, we can see that the next thing we need to do is we need to run this command so that we can generate the Tailwind CSS code. Before that, let's go ahead and go back to the index.html file, and let's remove this CDN of Tailwind CSS from here. And now if you go back to our website, we can see that we don't have any CSS added to our website. Now we're going to store the generated Tailwind CSS code inside a file called output.css. So let's link that file over here. I'll just tap link, and here I'll just tap /output.css. And then we can see that we have these settings that we added to Tailwind CSS. So let's copy all of this from here, and let's add it inside the input.css file. So just below the import, I'll just paste all the code. And now we can go ahead and delete this section as well. So let's delete all of this. But now if you go back to our website, we still don't have the Tailwind CSS because we haven't generated it yet. So let's go back to the guide. And the next thing we need to do is run this command. So what we will do is we'll just store this command as a script inside package.json. So here inside the script, I'll just delete this test script. And let's create a script called dev. And here we'll just go ahead and copy this command from here and paste it right here. Now here they have a folder called src, and in that they have the input.css file, but we have it inside the root of our project. So I'll just remove src from here, and we'll also remove src from the output. So now when we run this command, we will have a new file generated over here called output.css, and in that all the Tailwind CSS code will be added. And since we are linking that in the HTML file, all the design will be restored in our website. And before that, let's go ahead and add one more command over here. So right now it is set to watch. Let's create a new command. So I'll just copy this, and I'll just add a comma and paste it over here. And we'll just call this command build. And here instead of watch, let's type minify. So we'll use this build command when we are ready with our design and we just want to deploy it. Before that, for testing, we will use this dev command. So now let me show you how to run this dev command. So let's open the terminal, and here you have to type npm run dev. And if I press enter, here we can see we have a new file called output.css added, and that we have all these CSS code that was generated using Tailwind CSS. So these are all the classes that we used in our HTML file. So now if you go back to our website, we can see that the design is restored and everything is looking alright. Let's also take a look at the mobile version, and it is also looking alright. Let's also take a look at the mobile menu, and we don't have any problems. So with that, we have set up Tailwind CSS for production. Now let's see whether it works if we change anything inside our HTML file. So if we go over here, and let's change the color of this text. So let's just search for vbuild. So here I'll just change the color of this text to text red 500, and let's see whether it is working. And now we can see that the text has changed to red. So the Tailwind CSS output is being generated correctly. Let's go back and undo that. Right now let's go back and run the other command called npm run build. And now if you go to the output.css file, we can see that the CSS code is minified. So this takes up less space, and it is production ready. Right now let me show you how to deploy this online. So the only thing we need to add to the server are the index.html file, the main.js file, the output.css file, and the images folder. All the other things are just needed for development. We don't need to push these to the server. So I'll just create a new folder called public, and I'll just add these files over here. So we have index.html, main.js, output.css, and also this images folder. So let's copy all of these and let's add it to the public folder. And now we can go ahead and upload these files to Netlify, and our website will be live. So let's do that. So let's go to netlify.com, and I have created a free account in netlify.com. And once you log in, you'll find this screen right here. So here we need to add a new project. So let's click on add new project, and let's click on deploy manually. And here we need to just drag and drop our folder. Alright, so here we can see this is our folder, and we have added the files to the public folder. So I'll just go ahead and drag and drop this folder over here into Netlify. And here we can see it says that our project was deployed. So let's click on this link. And here we can see our website is being displayed correctly. Everything is working all right. Now you can go ahead and change the domain name to whatever you want. So if you go to domain management, you can go ahead and click on options, edit project name, and you can add any name you want over here, and it will have this netlify.app subdomain. And if you want to add a custom domain, you can also do that. You can just click on add a domain and use one of these options and follow the instructions. Alright, so that's basically how you can deploy your Tailwind CSS project to Netlify. So that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.